I'm in Slovenia, and I warmly greet you all. A few pilgrims from Italy came to see us here. One of them left at 5 this morning to join us today. These are precious testimonies that greatly encourage the small remainder, precisely made up of testimonies like this one from our brother. I won't say his name to respect his privacy. He left Italy this morning at 5 o'clock to come here and attend Brother Celestino's Mass, and then to be here with a few other faithful to attend Saints and coffee. I wholeheartedly bless the faithful who have come. I imagine they too will have made sacrifices to be here, and those who would have liked to be here but couldn't, because I heard that someone wanted to be present but couldn't. Someone else, by the way, attended Brother Celestino's Mass, but being a work day and having to leave, they couldn't stay for the refreshments. Today's the liturgical feast day of St. Paul, a hermit, a desert monk who lived on the bare essentials and lived to be over 100 years old. And then he was also a friend of St. Anthony, the abbot, considered the first monk of the desert, and also the memory of St. Mauro. Yesterday, we began the first day of the novena for Russia. Crikey, this novena's a real slog. I say no more. I can't say anything else about that. How heavy this novena is. That means it gets straight to the point. And this makes me understand that it really is so, that we must, as they say, focus not on journalistic chatter, because some people want to speculate on the church's dramatic situation. Like when someone's dying, and here come the funeral directors. The funeral directors' inspectors are arriving. You know, because the person is dying, they say, we offer all funeral services, even to those still alive. But I see that some people are speculating like this. I won't name names, but it's not hard to figure out who they are. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I don't know how many I can count. Only we are truly working for the good of the church. Then, whether it's believed or not, the Eternal Father knows all. With the rosary beads we hold in our hands, we move forward. Certainly with a certain sorrow, because what has happened recently in the last year is creating confusion. Also the story of Father Christmas and Santo Nocito. It's causing huge confusion. People keep asking why he won't join the sodality. But what are the reasons for this disintegration? Right? Anyway, what I wanted to say is this. It's not that some people are speculating on the dramatic situation. Within the church, there are those who want to profit from it, those who want to have their own sphere of influence. The line is bad.
Sta creando una confusione immensa tra la gente, perché la gente si chiede ma perché non si unisce al sodalizio? Ma quali sono I motivi di questa disgregazione? Vabbè, comunque quello che volevo dire è questo, è che c'è chi specula sulla situazione drammatica nella Chiesa, c'è chi ci vuole guadagnare, chi vuole avere il proprio
We're abroad, so it's understandable. So, the situation in the church is dramatic, and some people are exploiting it. Beware of the speculators, the inspectors of the funeral rites of Holy Mother Church, who come while the mystical body of Christ, however small a remnant, is still alive and well. So then yesterday we began this novena. I don't know how many people connected. Few or many, I hope many. I don't want to know, I'm not interested. But today we continue. I invite the faithful of the small remaining non-Italian group, especially from Eastern Europe, where in some ways it's not quite East yet, but almost. I'd say so, yes. We're in Slovenia today, and now we're going to head towards the border between Hungary and Romania to join in this prayer for Russia. To this rosary that we are praying for Russia. There's nothing more that the devil fears than prayer. Remember these words of mine. That's well known, though. It's good to always bear it in mind. Let's turn our days into prayer. There's nothing worse for devils than prayer. What the devil wants to do isn't disturb idle chatter. In fact, I could provide evidence of that. It facilitates and promotes it. Because the devil's chatter doesn't matter to him. Even those who tell the truth, but where there are oases and clubs that denounce the dramatic situation in the church, but there's no rosary. Rather, there's contempt for prayer. You understand? There are secular enclaves that think they can solve the church's problems. The devil promotes those things. Instead, it directly confronts those realities that pray, or seduces them. Medjugorje has been seduced. I don't know if the seers did or not. I don't think so. But I can't say for sure. About those seers, I'm unsure. I'm talking about the 6 visionaries, both the 3 who claim to continue seeing Our Lady every day, and I believe this, Maria, Vika, and Ivan, and the 3 who see her once a year, namely Ivanka, Yakov, and Margiana. I don't know if Maria still meets on the 2nd, but it's no longer public. I don't remember this. Anyway, the devil, how he attacked Medjugorje in every possible way. Now it's night, Medjugorje, because Bergoglio and the false church have conquered it. Mind you, the devil doesn't stop, so we must resist with the rosary. It's the weapon that stops him. Have you heard more about the Medjugorje rosary, by any chance? Tell me, has Our Lady forgotten about it? I don't want to be controversial, but those messages, I say this with all due respect to those who I'm talking about myself, for those instead who find those messages pleasant and good. Yes, a general appeal to prayer is one thing, but it's quite another to say pray the rosary, because that's what the devil fears. Today, the only weapon available to fight the devil is the rosary. Right then, we'll see each other again this afternoon at 5 o'clock, I think, for the 2nd day of the novena. Do connect, everyone. Look, I did, and I'm not saying this to show off. I'm saying this to encourage you all. I made huge sacrifices yesterday to say that rosary. I want to be very clear with you. I really needed the loo. I'd been in the car for 3 or 4 hours. But since we arrived in Ljubljana at 5 o'clock, precisely at 5 o'clock, right at 5 o'clock, I was dying of thirst. All right. I'm not saying this to boast. I'm saying it to encourage you all, my dear children. I was incredibly thirsty. I really needed the loo in every way, but I couldn't. I offer this to Madonna with love. That rosary really weighed me down yesterday. Then I also had some pain anyway to say that we can make sacrifices connected to everyone at 5 o'clock, because now more than ever I understand that this novena is precious. I don't know what it might mean, but if it's true that it's us, the Roman Catholicism that, as I will say today, Benedict XVI spoke of, clearly it's up to us. I had to pray, because do you think God listens to the prayers of the Bergoglians? Today, I went to the supermarket last night because, to save money, we eat in our room, unless breakfast is included in the price. And now, you see, let's also get some takeaway stuff, things to eat like pastries during the journey. Besides, they're included in the price. It's not a ripoff. Yesterday, coming back from buying some food, I got a huge sausage, like this big. I saw along this main street, or I don't know if it's a main street, a church, 70s Catholic. I thought they hold Mass here, don't they? The Lord doesn't hear those celebrations. They don't reach heaven. So God awaits our prayer. That is, I appeal to the faithful of the little remnant. If we are clear that we are the Catholic resistance, because we have not been contaminated by Bergoglio's false church, the satanic, Masonic, Satanist church, we must pray very much for the whole world. We must become prayer, my dear children, spend our days and nights in prayer. I'm always struck, I know why, by the story of Monsignor Fulton Sheen, who was hospitalized with excruciating back pain. He couldn't move. He was put in a room as a bishop, where there was another patient there in the States. And that one, I don't know if he was swearing. Anyway, he was despairing because he was in pain. So Monsignor Fulton Sheen recounts that he said to the Lord, "Lord, I promise I will pray and I will not complain. If you calm him down." That one calmed down, and he was in pain all night, but he prayed. Right, we need to pray. The rest is just talk. And this chatter, how shall I say now today, can be transformed into betrayal. Anyway, here I await you for this precious appointment at 5 o'clock on the second day of the novena for Russia. Yesterday evening there was the catechesis. On the prologue, the second part, I don't know if you were able to follow it. It's available on the Radio Domina playlist. Ours, here it is, The Eagle and the Sun, my book. The prologue, second part. It will take a little while. The prologue, because naturally it's a work, the first verses of John's Gospel. The first 18 verses are a masterpiece. Anyway, I refer you to that. Instead, this evening, as you know, at 9 o'clock, it's Wednesday. There's the Wednesday Bible study, a commentary on next Sunday's Gospel with Father Enrico. There it is, the post. Share it, share it, share it. I'll be able to let you know the next appointments in Italy soon. Naturally, the two most important ones, you already know them. Sunday, the 2nd of February, the Feast of the Presentation of Jesus at the Temple. Candlemas will be in Milan at 3 o'clock. And then on Tuesday, the 11th of February, the Feast of Our Lady of Lourdes. At 6 o'clock in the evening, we'll be in Verona. I remember what I said, it seems like yesterday or the day before. The other at Mass on Sunday, within a radius of at least about 150 kilometers. If there are no structural problems, you must go if there's a priest from the small remaining group that says Mass. This was very important to say. I'm traveling, I'm in Slovenia. A couple of faithful came today. How lovely. Look, it's like that everywhere. I've told you this before. When I went to Brazil, Brazil isn't Slovenia. Slovenia is next to Italy, and that's already a different reality. But then, if you come from Sicily, even more so, if you're from Friuli. Friulians and Slovenes, well, all things considered, but Sicilians and Slovenes, that's a different story. But if you go to Brazil, you're on the other side of the world. I remember organizing a prayer meeting, and they came. In that respect, I'd like to ask my colleagues to give me the text of an email that arrived from Australia. From Australia, which is probably one of the furthest countries from here. How long? A day's flight, right? About 25. We have some loyal followers from the small remaining part of Australia. I greet Christina and her husband, for example, and everyone else. Yesterday, my colleagues showed me a message from Australia. So it said this, I won't say who, I hope these emails find you well. It's addressed to me. I'm writing, hoping to get directions on where to find a priest in Australia. That is, we have a Holy Father Nochito, 200 kilometers from Little Nazareth, waiting for them to call him to say Mass. Who must call him? The faithful remnant? To the detriment of Don Minutella and the priests of the sodality. In Little Nazareth, for now, there's Don Enrico. I don't understand what's behind all this. Anyway, this person from Australia is asking me, imagine my struggle, because I'm a man like everyone else. In fact, I'd say worse than everyone else, worse off than everyone else. But we must face all this, help the Lord and Pope Benedict XVI with John Paul II and 2 witnesses of the Lamb to move forward. So, where can you find a priest in Australia who's not in communion with Bergoglio? He's a man, eh? God bless you, and thank you in advance for any assistance you can give us. So I replied, Hail Mary, unfortunately, I don't know a priest with Bergoglio, but I hope one day to come and celebrate the sacraments in Australia too, if it is God's will. Yesterday's reply, good evening, and thank you very much for your message. It would be an immense pleasure to have the privilege of receiving a visit from a faithful priest from this part of the world. That's what moved me, because he didn't say your visit. To say that there's no, as those wretched enemies say, favoritism. It's clear I'm the leader, it's clear I was the first, it's clear I have charisma. You can't just pretend it's not there, you have to say it, otherwise you're being a hypocrite. But the fellow doesn't say, it would be an immense pleasure to have you, but it would be an immense pleasure to have a faithful priest. How lovely from this part of the world. Let's hope it's God's will. I humbly ask you to let me know. If you ever think of coming to Australia, or by divine providence, you know a faithful priest to whom you can again request it. Some folks oppose Bergoglio. Will priests be saved here? I really don't know about these priests. It makes me angry. They're stuck in the rectory, depressed, seeing a psychologist. You know about this, don't you? They go to psychiatrists for treatment because their churches are empty. They don't know how to spend their day. And then we have faithful followers from Australia who ask us for help. Honestly, look, it's a terrible situation, the one we're experiencing. As Cardinal Caffarra said, to start again, from the beginning. This was to tell you what levels we're at, where we are, what stage the situation is at. Anyway, we're on our journey. One last thing before we move on to today's episode. We're on our way to Romania. That's not just around the corner. Got it? When he said Romania, since we have many in Italy, there are also many Romanians in Sicily. You'd imagine it's just around the corner. But what's around the corner? From here, from Ljubljana, it's still about 5 hours to Budapest. And then from Budapest to Cluj-Napoca, it's another 7 hours or so, or maybe even more. So come on, let's go, because there's a nice group. This is an appeal I'd like to make. There he is, let's put him on air. Meanwhile, the video, the movie contribution. On the invitation in Romanian to the small remainder of the Romanian language present in Romania. And then I'll tell you one more thing.
Però andiamo perché c'è un bel gruppo, questo è un appello che vorrei rivolgere, eccolo lì, adesso mandiamo in onda intanto il video, il contributo movie sull'invito in lingua rumena al piccolo resto di lingua rumena presente in Romania. E poi vi dico una cosa
Lăudați să fie Iisus Hristos, anunț important pentru comunitatea din România. Părintele Alexandru Maria Minutela și fratele Celestin vor fi prezenți la Cluj-Napoca duminică, 19 ianuarie 2025, începând cu ora 15, ora României, și ora 14, ora Italiei, pentru a întâlni pe credincioșii din micul rest.
For the faithful, it's small, I remain. But I wanted to say something important. There's a small remainder, well organized. Then it was decimated because of Minutela's show translated into Romanian. Got it? Got it? The damage Minutela's show is doing is incalculable. Me? But I say they'll save their souls. I've proved they're lying, right? Why did they write that I paid for 𝐵𝐻𝐼𝐺𝐻 arrival with the faithful's money? I forced the benefactor to call to prove it's not true. So if that's not true, then perhaps everything else isn't true either. Anyway, see ya. But there's a group, because there's a woman, here's my appeal. To all the faithful of the small non-Italian remainder, that they get busy, that there is a figure, especially if a woman, and that she does not have mystical gifts. For goodness sake, I hope he has no gifts, or if he does, that he keeps them to himself. A down-to-earth woman, practical, like the dear Victoria Campanfigliola. I think that's her name, eh? With his daughter, they're holding together, as best they can, this tiny remaining community in Romania. Because the priests can't always be there, in fact, they can't. And so the faithful suffer from the lack of a priest. But if there's a figure who keeps them united, this can happen in Brazil, Argentina, France, Romania, Slovenia, anywhere, in Italy. No, because we have regional representatives. And the good thing there is that the priests are constantly circulating. However, in other nations, people should spontaneously start thinking about a figure who works like Don Minutella, like Brother Celestino, Don Enrico, Don Pavel, Don Ramon, and Don Joannese. Got it? That is, to keep everyone united and do valuable work spreading the truth in the national language. Right? That was important to say. Okay, now let's look at today's episode because it's very crucial. While I reiterate, today's afternoon post has gone through. For the second day of Novena, Father, what's it involve? The Rosary. A Novena of the Rosary. What else should we ask for? What should we offer? Here you go, please, the director, if there's a post, to show the appointment. Here it is, this afternoon's Novena for Russia with Don Minutella at 5 o'clock. Let's go to today's episode. The title is Benedict XVI's Prophecy. It's the risk of betraying him. I started this episode about this Novena for Russia, and I believe Our Lady asked me to, while I'm traveling, to help you understand the importance of sacrifice. Because in Medjugorje, when the decisive epochal events took place, Our Lady requested a novena of prayer and renunciation. Do you remember? Not just of prayer, but also of renunciation. So I said, but how is it possible that I had to mature with the help of Our Lady? This novena, just since yesterday, we were in the car 7 hours, and I just wanted the rosary to end so I could pee. How's today going, dunno? And tomorrow will be even worse because of the time difference, the changing languages, the borders. We need to fill up with petrol. Why's that? Basically, for the most part, this novena with Brother Celestine, we spend it traveling. Abroad, why didn't Our Lady ask us while we were in Italy? I understand the reason. Through me and Celestine, sending a message to all of you. Prayer and renunciation sacrifice with joy, we offer Our Lady what we can. Even those who can, fast a little, those who can, but the renunciation, even of food, to offer to Our Lady. Today's episode, Benedicts Prophecy. Risk of betraying him. Increasingly so, presenting the risk that Benedict XVI might be betrayed, even by unexpected individuals. That is, I'll be clear now. First of all, we said at the beginning of this episode, the Lord doesn't save the church with chatter. I don't believe he was ever much of a chatterbox, I think, and I'll show you how. Because from the very beginning, the little sisters kept an heirloom which, when I die, will probably be considered a relic, if what I'm doing is true. It's the briefcase I used to carry around with me to Mass when I first started touring, November 2016, all over Italy. That is, I preached, but I went among the people, connecting with them from the start. The faithful from the very beginning, I can testify to this. They already know. The faithful from the very beginning can testify. Taking with me immediately the rosary, the consecration to Our Lady, and I was alone. In Milan, there were 20 people. Veneto's always been a bit different because I went there to get straight to the point. So many people. It was so many people straight away. In Verona, in Veneto. But in other regions, it took all the other regions. More time, because Veneto was different. I can't tell you, or I know, but I won't say. So I stepped in. Talk's not enough. But at least the chatter, somehow on social media, about those who believe they can save the church through daily pronouncements or other legal initiatives, of pulls of lawyers intervening for praying. Are these people praying? They pray for at least 4 or 5 hours a day. Because if they don't, they'd better get out. Because if they can start well, and then the devil plays them. Because this is a battle, and that's where they mock me when I say it. Apocalyptic, they don't believe it. They doubt the devil. They doubt it. They don't believe since they've never felt prayer's power. Do it. Do it, you little leftover, with Don Minutella, so that we save the church with petitions. You do these trivial things. You're wasting your time with the rosary. He talks to the Madonna. Some people said that, didn't they? I'm not sure if the issue is clear. So, if the chat were productive and led to a common solution, then at the very least, that's fine. Even chatterboxes can help. The problem is that this chatter is chatter that betrays Pope Benedict. And finally today, in today's episode, which connects to yesterday's, because yesterday's was very important. I do my best episodes when I'm in the car. That the line's going down, that there are problems. Yesterday I quoted 2 biblical texts from the New Testament. The second letter of John and the first letter of Paul the Apostle to the Corinthians, where clearly both we are talking about apostolic authorities of the first order. That is, we are in the presence of apostolic tradition, they say, cast out those who are apostates, idolaters. St. Paul doesn't say, don't eat with idolaters. Got Bergoglian books? Don't you eat there? Oh well, never mind. But Paul was referring, as you know, surely to the Eucharistic celebration, the Eucharistic food. And the Apostle John does worse, of all people, the apostle of love. And that speaks volumes. Because the Apostle John tells Christians, those who betray, those who do not preserve the doctrine. John says so. We saw it yesterday. Whoever does not preserve the doctrine has no God. Those who do not preserve the doctrine, and we see this today, that the false Bergoglian church has changed the doctrine, has not preserved it, has no God. John adds, don't receive such people into your home and don't greet them. And here, not receiving them at home is still a domestic aspect. But don't greet them. He's probably referring to the liturgical greeting, the exchange of peace. Here, clearly, the apostolic tradition is on the side of Don Minutella, who has been saying for 8 years, don't go to Mass in union with heretics, don't set foot in their churches, and don't Bergoglianize. Father, have you heard about this from Australia? I'm not making this up, but a few days ago someone called me from here, from Eastern Europe. Father, are you going to Romania? I'm not saying where, but doesn't it go through here? How can I? I can't manage it. Father, I'll follow you. I have to tell you, you're right about everything, but how can I haven't received the sacraments for years. Because when she says that one shouldn't go to Mass in union with heretics, she's right, not because she says so, but because it's true. Lord, why deny me the sacraments? I desire the Eucharist, and the church is nearby, home. I replied, my dear, are you from around here? Yes, ergo. Yes, of the place. You speak Italian well, yes. Listen to me, it doesn't depend on you. Don't worry, it's the priests who aren't coming. It's them who will answer to God, not you. You have the right to have Mass celebrated, not in union with the impostor. The problem is that priests in Italy are eyeing the 8 per mil tax. How things work here. Abroad, priests have their guarantees. That was the devil. There's not a priest in the whole world who's unwell. In Africa, where there are villages, the priest is perfectly fine. The priest in Africa, in the inland villages of Congo, suits him well. And because you're a priest, you get bourgeois, you lack nothing. That's a bit what the gospel says. The devil's throwing dust in your eyes, giving you false appearances, and then you can't get out. You're afraid of excommunications, but if you love souls, you'll tell them at Mass. In Italy, it's becoming increasingly clear, apparently in an ever-growing numerical way. Significantly numerically, a direction of priests who remain diocesan in the parishes, who don't mention Bergoglio at Mass. The bishops know this, and as long as the situation doesn't explode, they leave them where they are. How can you leave them all behind? This too is contamination. God's word doesn't say that. So there's total confusion. But the problem today, this was yesterday's topic, is that there's a prophecy by Benedict XVI, which I quote extensively in my books. No? 𝐤'𝐸, where to? And Peter, where are you? The quote I wanted to take in full is by Benedict XVI. Here it is. Of the 25th of December, 1969. So I don't think he was even a cardinal yet, or even a bishop. Let me read what Benedict wrote. If that's what he said, then who's it for? Today he's circulating petitions to regain what they call the reconquest of the Church, because the canonical path must lead us to be freed from the antipope. The structures are ours. The Church will be as it was before. If that were the case, as some on that side insist, they would be betraying Benedict XVI. Now we'll see why. I'll give you a heads up first, then we'll read it. Otherwise, you'll wait to see how it works and not pay attention. I'll warn you first. Am I wrong? Or did Pope Benedict speak of a church that would become a minority? Underground, persecuted, irrelevant. He said this Pope Benedict predicted it. And he's not the only one. Fulton Sheen, Catherine Emmerich, Padre Pio, even Paul VI as Pope. That's why we call it Benedict XVI's prophecy. Actually, to be honest, we should say Ratzinger's prophecy,
E non è l'unico. Anche Fulton
because he wasn't even a bishop yet, Pope Paul VI. Instead, he was already Pope. Addirittura, he was Pope. A year before he died, therefore old and worn out by the post-conciliar season, I don't understand how traditionalists attribute an enthusiasm for change to Paul VI, who instead died of the sorrow of seeing the church compromised. As you may recall, he said it himself, from the smoke of Satan. So Paul VI, in a dialogue, I quote him extensively in my book, Church, Where Are You Going? A dialogue with Jean Guitton, the Catholic philosopher Jean Guitton, French. He says this, we see, says the Pope, or to spread. In 1977, a thought no longer Catholic, and it's likely, he said, that will sooner or later become the official thinking. Interesting, because the Pope got it right, he adds, but it will never truly be the Church's thinking. Which will survive, he says in a small flock. Right then, explain it to me in the clearest possible terms. How would this reconcile with the expectation of a reconquest of what? It's still not quite clear, with the petitions the cardinals have to resolve and which they resolve with a conclave. So, this poses some very big problems. First big problem that this should bring about is, but why didn't Pope Benedict do it if it's now up to the cardinals to save the church? Ever wondered, isn't it a betrayal? Isn't it implicitly saying who's carrying on the petitions and the reconquest that Pope Benedict, a chatterbox, or so they say in Sicilian? A chatterbox. You know what 𝐷𝐸𝐴 means in Sicilian? It shouldn't be difficult. It fell short. That is Sicilian in the Sicilian dialect. A 𝐷𝐸𝐴 means you're useless. 𝐸𝐮𝐿, that one's incapable. It's a useless thing. If we predict that Pope Benedict, who was Pope, had the munus, yes, he was in impeded office, but who should have made the appeal after him? Why should they have resolved it? You're the Pope, you resolve it, right? This raises the problem of not answering this question. The idea of the white envelope, the white basket delivered to Bergoglio isn't necessary, but they're turning Pope Benedict into a kind of Alfred Hitchcock, right? They need to stop it. I say it in the name of the Lord and of souls. Stop it! Benedict XVI wasn't Alfred Hitchcock. Yes, me first. I was the first to say there was a code. I didn't call it a code. I said that Benedict XVI, he didn't deliver the munus because he was prevented. That's all. But now to say that there are codes because he delivers things, it's disrespectful towards a pope who's portrayed as a trickster, a kind of post-literate Tangentopoli. There's a pope who does things, but are we joking? If the Pope had to foresee, as someone says, together with his people, that the cardinals, under the inspiration of a pool of lawyers, must meet under the protection of petitions in conclave to save the Church. But why did Pope Benedict have to put us in such a mess? Sorry the word, but it seems obvious, doesn't it? They're not answering that question. And if the Pope foresaw this, shouldn't he have? It's dishonest if he did that, because he should have done it. He was still a pope. He only said, but Pope, a priest I started alone. When you have God on your side, you fear nothing. When you have God backing you up, you understand. Like Moses, you fear no one, even if you have the whole world against you. Let's see. The martyrs, they went to their deaths, proud of the Christian faith. They need to explain why Pope Benedict made this choice of entrusting it to the cardinals. If it's even true, this is the second point, to cardinals who are turning out to be rabbits. The petitions are multiplying, like the loaves and fishes in the gospel. Every day a new cardinal pops up, someone's put in a petition for them. It's pathetic. They need to stop this charade. The bergamasques are playing along with us. After this last act, why are some people abandoning our cause? Loads of petitions here, there, to Cardinal Tizio, to Cardinal Caio, to Cardinal Bagnasco, to Cardinal Paolo, to this cardinal, that cardinal, the latest ones. I don't know who they are. Every day a new petition pops up, but why don't they stop? But what should they do? Third step, first step, why didn't he do it? Pope Benedict. Second attempt, the cardinals who should be doing it aren't. Third point, but what should the cardinals do? First of all, they must purify themselves, because it seems to me, but over there, those in suits pretend and feign ignorance and never say a word. That these cardinals, to whom petitions have been addressed for 12 years, celebrate Mass in union with Pope Francis. Where we at? It's said that since Don Ramon Guidetti came out last year, so there's hope that the cardinals will walk. One moment, there's a hierarchy of responsibility. It's one thing to consider a single parish priest from a small village in Tuscany. It's one thing if it's the cardinal of St. Ramona Church, especially if he's involved in the false conclave. From 2013, without his knowledge perhaps. But then he saw that things turned out like this, so it was all a maneuver. What should these cardinals do? The unthinkable, children. Watch this part with the fourth ahead. We'll repeat it. First point. Why didn't Pope Benedict do it himself? He should have delegated it to others. It's an act of irresponsibility. Second point. Which cardinals are they addressing? These repeated appeals aren't working. Thirdly, what should these cardinals do? The unthinkable. What's the unthinkable? Honestly, if you think about it, it's a signature move. I don't know if this film's also out in Slovenia. In Italy, it's called Conclave, and it's proving quite popular. It's the story of the election of the new pope. Rather fitting, given the current moment. And do you know how it ends? That he's a gay pope, if I understand correctly. That she was a woman and became a man. Oh well, are you surprised? Anyway, what should they do? Watch out for unforeseen events. Officially, they pretend not to understand it from the other side. Those who are ridiculing the small remainder. Who's behind it? Don't you notice there's a process of ridicule of the little that's left? Like, look how they've ended up, how they're squabbling amongst themselves. There's something behind this attempt that will fail, because it's already failing. To ridicule the tiny remainder. Who's there? Who's hiding? But I'm getting to the point. They pretend not to remember that the papal document 𝐸 𝐷 stipulates that the conclave should be held where? In Rome. Can we in Ljubljana? Hold conclave in Ljubljana? No, it can't be done. Why? The conclave demands it. It can be done in Rio de Janeiro, in Palermo, in Little Nazareth. No. Can it be done in Fatima or Moscow? No. The laws stipulate that the conclave must be held within the Vatican walls. The Universalist Dominus 𝐥'𝐿 says so. Among other things, it speaks of cardinals legitimately and validly so, for which it adds the Universi Dominici 𝐥'𝐿, that if the cardinals were not such, no authority, neither ecclesiastical nor lay, can elect the Roman pontiff. Therefore, the great prelate, the intervention comes from God. Got it. Let's proceed. So firstly, Pope Benedict would have committed a grave act of irresponsibility, having to do what he waited for others to do. Secondly, the cardinals should do it, invited by the petitions, and 12 years have passed. Nothing. Thirdly, what should they do? Right, they should do this. Who? The pre-Bergoglio cardinals who are melting away are mummified. It's like going to the catacombs. When you talk about pre-Bergoglio cardinals, it's like the catacombs. Here too, in Eastern Europe, there's someone, not yet 80 years old, who then enters the conclave and is a pre-Bergoglio appointee. Oh yes, the one from Zagreb, Emeritus of Zagreb, I can't remember his name. I even think Pulici, the one from Sarajevo, should still be of canonical age to enter the competition. They're Eastern European cardinals, appointed pre-Bergoglio. They should do these things. Let's see the film. Since the conclave needs to meet in Rome to be valid, they could decide on one of those wretched underlings, that one there. I won't name names today. Of those suit and tie undergrowth, they're wretched, but can they decide to do something else? You decide when the norm should be exceeded. So, if we suggest that Canonica Street isn't the only option, no, we're fanatics, we're a sect. But if I then throw in your faces that they must meet in Rome, because the code says so, since they feel blocked, the cardinals can decide otherwise. So it works when you say the exceeding of the norm. Tell me always, because when there are some of the faithful beyond my own, I always ask if what I'm saying is clear. Because these are sensitive matters. But they must meet in Rome, as we've already discussed. When does Bergoglio die or finish? It's not clear. Why would these pre-Bergoglio appointees wait for Bergoglio to die if he's not the Pope? They should have done it immediately. They have to meet today. Do you understand? Instead, they let these people in suits and ties pass. The lawyers' gang, the last-minute chatterboxes, the loudmouths interested in other ends at the last hour, they don't notice and pretend not to understand and don't say it. That they should meet right away. Not when Bergoglio dies or when Bergoglio's term ends. Why isn't Bergoglio the Pope? So if a conclave meets to say that Bergoglio isn't the Pope, then there's no need to wait. Do you understand, Maria? They aren't doing it. So we should assume they haven't done it for 12 years. And so, voila, as the French say. So the pre-Bergoglio cardinals are meeting in Rome. Because if an exception is made for one rule, it can be made for others. Right? Since they say the Pope can't, this guy in a suit and tie has been shouting it for ages. Now with all my detractors, the Pope's election can't be by acclamation. The document says so. So the document also says that the election takes place in Rome. Can you imagine it? You? Cardinals Sarah, Burke, and I don't know who else, all huddled together in the bathroom of St. Peter's Sacristy, because the Sistine Chapel is occupied in the meantime. Look, this is ridiculous. There's some kind of orchestration behind these disruptions. In these priests who are emerging, either ignoring him, sending him to that country, to Don Minutella like Don Cornet does, to levels of rudeness, because I sent him a gesture of solidarity when he was excommunicated. Defrocked. He didn't even reply. At least say thank you. Always a brother. I may be the devil, but I'm still a brother. Thanks, Father Minutella. Nothing. To all the questions, Don Minutella, leaving the interviewer embarrassed, who moved on to other questions. Or they distanced themselves, as a father, feign, elegantly. Or else they decide to value me, but call me. Because I'm telling you, you won't find masses in all this that's been happening lately. Something's going on. Someone's making moves, maneuvers to delegitimize the small remainder. I can see it anyway. Let's get back to it. The cardinals are secretly joining while those are joining in the Sistine Chapel. Why should they wait for those to join there to do it? They should do it immediately. I don't know why wait until 2036. Fourth point is what they deserve. There, sorry, it's an Italian gesture, a bit soft, the answer of these guys. With God, nothing is impossible. You wretched lot, so you decide where God should intervene. Because for them, the impossible, God can achieve it with the cardinals who can change. And this is possible. And why might that be possible? And isn't the great prelate possible? And isn't a small remainder possible? And isn't it possible that God intervenes by sending him, the one who must govern not as Pope, but as a great prelate, the Church? It's simply the same thing. Why do you decide? So they always decide everything. The pool of lawyers and journalists saves the Church. But what great prelate of Egypt, sent by God and prophesied by the Madonna? That's nonsense. For people who aren't all there, Catholics who pray too much, they screw up their brains, said by a journalist. I have proof. It's best they don't deny it, otherwise I'll show them. For some of these Bergoglio, so to speak, whispering, I've kept everything. For this, to show how respectful I am. The Antichrist, right? Recently they asked, but stop it with this stuff. But how did you say that to someone? Of course, the evidence. Don't pray too much, you'll scramble your brains. I don't know if the readers will understand this, I hope not. Strong words. True. You agree, it's strong, but it's the expression itself where they're screwing their brains up, those who pray too much. We, on the other hand, are lawyers, journalists, serious people. What if we followed Don Minutella, the guru from Carini, the one with the pronouncements? The church, the reconquest. So they also realize that a special intervention from God is needed to save the church through the canonical way. But they rule out God deciding to save the church with a specific intervention. Not the canonical way. They chose that. Remember? What sign do you show us to prove you are the Messiah? The Pharisees. He raised Lazarus? That level or not? I think so. Beware of betraying Benedict XVI. Did he raise Lazarus? No, Benedict XVI. There's no one. Did he raise Lazarus? You look like a priest dressed like that. You look like a priest. I was saying because I get distracted sometimes. For that reason, it seems like with the cassock in these times. Nun zalatala. So they gather in conclave secretly. And how do they formalize the election? If they come out with it, if they do it secretly, how do you know the Pope's there? A new one? But the Pope, successor to whom? Because there's a canonical default, which is the pool of canon lawyers that someone's desperately trying to assemble and get involved to show off their power. They pretend not to understand. It's that there's a canonical default, a serious one. On the 20th of January 2023, the time available for the Papa Vere Mortis Est ended. The real Pope, the Pope is Vere, means truly dead, but Vere also in the sense that he was the true Pope. And the cardinals had from the 31st of December to the 20th of January 2022. By the 20th of January 2023, the death of the Pope was made known. In that sense, we had initially supported the initiative. If you remember, I hope you remember, I even went to Rome because of that, because of Fra Alexis Bugnolo. At the beginning, if you remember, when the crazy idea of holding a conclave hadn't occurred to him, but he's holding a conclave, is he? It's been cut down to a absolutely brilliant day, because I forbade the faithful of Rome from going, and thank goodness they listened to me. But he simply had to be with us. Of the little rest, the problem is that there's always the same problem. To delegitimize Don Minutella as a leader. And that's just how it is. If you notice, Satan's obsessed with needing to get rid of anyone else. Please, he says, get rid of anyone else, even someone else from the Brotherhood. Because it shouldn't be him. Because if it's him who's been chosen, you know who I'm talking about? By Don Minutella. Grace comes only and solely through recognizing him as the guide, because God wills it. Imagine how I'm forced to say this. It's stupid to say I want to show off. It almost makes me cry to say it today. Because I know I'm doing this to reaffirm myself, because you today being here are realizing my rhythms. No. And look at my eyes, how they well up, because I'm hurting from what I'm writing. What's the use of such a life? But what kind of life is this life? If you haven't got high values, like those of children, of the little great heroes of faith, who think of paradise, who suffer with love, who pray all day long, smiling and saying, go with Mary, but what's in it for you? Like me, I recall telling one of my girls who follows me, to one of the sisters, to Sister Marika, I said, and yet, sister, that I'm beginning to like the cold. For a while, she didn't tell me to get lost, in the nice way, as in, are you crazy? Because she didn't believe me. I did it because it was very cold yesterday. I had a problem, so I tried to explain because at one point I had to drive for 7 hours. Reassure them, who'd make me do that? But what do they want? They're a bunch of scoundrels. What's the idea that I want to stand for? Because it's not possible that instead of going through the cardinals, so we have cardinals to whom petitions are addressed. You go down on your knees like 𝐤'𝐵𝐻𝐵 before them and implore them to do something, and they do nothing. On the other hand, there's some poor sod claiming to be sent by the Madonna, saying she's given him signs that she wants this work done, that it's us, the small remnant the Pope speaks of. And no, it's not possible. Like the Pharisees they chose. See what's happening? This calls for humility and prayer. Look, I don't get on with everyone. Some people in here, right? Let me give you an example. It's not about being graceful in your eyes. Actually, I realize I'm loved by a lot of people. I have to say that. There are actually people who love me in the sense that they're attracted to me. But some of the little remainder don't feel this. Actually, sometimes they also find me a bit strong-willed. If someone's a bit shy, they might think I'm too impulsive. But the problem here isn't whether I'm likable or not. For the rest, the time has come to declare it. The problem is accepting whether I am the guide and understanding whether I invented this guidance. Or it was given to me, heaven. Prayer and humility are key. But in conclusion, they're betraying Benedict XVI. It's no longer a risk, it's a reality. Why betray him? But why are you going, he said, if we were to say he should have talked about a minority church? Do you remember? Clandestine, irrelevant. But if the journalists and the team of lawyers are on their knees, then I'll return to you on my knees. Says Morandi, they beg the cardinals to save the church by canon law. What will become of this minority church? If everything returns to how it was before, as they hope on that side, with the petitions, the requests, the appeals, the canonical way. What becomes of this prophecy of Pope Benedict, which is also that of Paul VI? What's become of it? It's contradictory, and so it's a betrayal of Pope Benedict's prophetic dimension. You understand that they've got the stole of prophecy, these secular journalists who don't pray, or if they do pray, they don't let on because it mustn't be known. We're journalists and lawyers, lay people, but we'll save the church. But see what level of madness this reaches, because this is satanic madness. The church is Jesus Christ's, and the situation is so serious that, as Father Onís said between Celestino and Don Enrico, only God can save it, not men, not journalists, not even lawyers. Let them pray, plant a tree, and stop gossiping, preferably with some results. Let them pray, get out of the way, be quiet, put their hands down, and let those whom heaven has chosen do their work. Otherwise, they're working for Satan. In fact, Father Christmas, Santo Nocito, is 200 kilometers from Little Nazareth. And that's it. Wait for him to call, but you can't find him. Look, with rage, with deep sorrow. Call me, phone me, and I'll tell you. But there's this flaw, but there's an agenda we're tearing apart. Live, today I don't really know. I have to get to Romania. It feels like I'm going to the other side of the world. It isn't, but because of factors anyway. And this, wait for them to call him. Why? Why did she discover the Magna Quaestio with Dr. Cianci, the interviewer? Look, we're at, levels of delusion. The interviewer asks him, do you know Don Minutella? Yes, I respect him. We're from the same region. We've met and spent time together. He wasn't a priest yet. He became one last year. And the ordination is valid because it doesn't depend on Bergoglio, Pope or not. I've mentioned this before. The power, we'll discuss it. The bishop, however, consecrates the priest. Those who consecrated him, frankly speaking, ordered. Don Enrico and Don Ramon are, however, for the Bergoglian. As bishops, you see. Anyway, now's not the time to talk anyway. Father Christmas is validly ordained. Question, but you? Do you know Don Minutella? Yes, he was the first. But I understood things thanks to Dr. Cianci. At that point you say, but what's behind it? What's behind it? What's behind it? You understand, don't you? Isn't this a project to betray Pope Benedict and delegitimize the small remainder? It's to divide us because we were united. It's been since October 2024 that a maneuver has taken over. It's a maneuver. The tanks have entered the small remainder. With the tanks, there are souls that have departed. With levels of justification, moreover, quite clamorous. Of the type, I don't like it anymore, like Don Minutella preaches because he shouts. But why, excuse me, the truth depends on how one announces it. Yes, Father Benedetto is calmer, slower, more comfortable to listen to. He brings peace. Oh well, follow him. But he's telling you to go to Mass again, Grandma, with Pope Francis? No, yes. But since he says it softly, he convinces me. I don't know, what kind of souls are these? Are there any around? But people, as it happens, have been reduced in terms of their mental and spiritual levels. Few are the souls I've met with a light in their eyes who tell me, Father Alessandro, you are the Madonna's chosen one. Go on. I will never abandon you. Save the church thus. A few, be on your guard. So, if the church is to be saved with petitions, the proposal is that the cardinals in the sacristy cabinet of St. Peter's meet and elect the new pope. But why are they waiting for Bergoglio to leave if Bergoglio isn't the pope? And why are they celebrating in union with Pope Francis if he's not the pope? The shocking part is waiting till 36 when Cardinal Welki's gone. But that's Bergoglian in the sense that if you listen to it, they made me listen to it. But over here, the journalistic and legal pool pretends not to notice. That one defends Pope Francis, and for him the fact that Bergoglio is the Pope is untouchable. It can be healed. And why? Why does God intervene? And why must God intervene there and not like this? No one can explain it. I put this question to the journalists today, and why should it follow God, the canonical way? Who said the canonical path is the decisive path? God is free to go beyond it, except that neither God nor we have gone beyond it. Cardinals passed it last January since they haven't declared. So the idea of a reconquest where the church returns to its former state, it contradicts everything, and I've concluded because time is pressing. Pope Benedict's prophetic statements of a minority church, a church reduced to irrelevance and clandestinity, persecuted. I discuss this in my book, Church, Where Are You Going? A Benedictine Turning Point. And so a small remnant scattered across the world, especially at this moment in Italy. Why Italy? Because, unfortunately, there's the linguistic vehicle. If I spoke Slovenian, I'd have seen that Slovenia has half the population of Sicily. It's incredible. This Slovenia, a proud nation, a nation with a great football team that even frightens national teams like France, Italy, and Spain. It only has 2.5 million inhabitants, maybe not even that. Sicily has almost 5 million. Incredible, this. I'm not saying Sicily should become a nation, but Palermo captain, no, I don't want to say that. I mean, if I spoke Slovenian as fluently as I speak Italian and I opened the radio dominates here, like I did in Italy. After today, I never see, I catch so many faithful. How many are there in Italy? Because it takes insistence. Well, I can't do it either. The solution's what I said before. We're heading to Romania. Yes to Romania, no to Hungary. Because in Romania there's someone, you see, with clear ideas, a loyal person who's been through so much with us, who brings the faithful together, keeps them united, and that's what we need. Do you remember the example of Paolo, who goes to see the tester? What was her name? Lydia? No, Lydia, women are decisive. Burke's career told me that a long time ago. When I started my work, I asked for his blessing because of the locutions. I didn't trust him. I went that day anyway. My temperature spiked to 40 degrees Celsius. My companion said, Father, it's not normal for you to have a fever after taking antibiotics. Last week, because of the fever you had, it's impossible for you to have another fever. It would prevent you from going. I went anyway, with a high fever, to meet him. And then at one of these meetings, I asked him to bless me and to check if this gift I believe I have comes from God. I knelt down, and he told me there was no need to check. because the fact that you as a priest knelt down asking for verification is already a sign of detachment and humility, so it's clear that the devil couldn't be involved. Anyway, they're nice because in these situations he told me, when it starts, don't worry, Father. Words about careers, then he asks me, oh well, who knows why him? They're powerful, those men, unsuspectingly so. I'll add nothing more. We've got them everywhere amongst us. They send them, like snakes, they send them. They must be unsuspected. They start well, then gradually reveal themselves. Because they hit hard, they go for a head-on collision. And there the Madonna, them. Shame, or is he using another verb that doesn't suit him, that he can't use this verb? It reveals him. So women can be decisive because in other nations, Slovenia, France, Spain, Romania, it's everywhere. There's a woman like Lydia did. I then find in the records, and I can read there, that the women stirred up the people. Against Paul, they were decisive, for good or for ill. Paul either finds himself with people on his side to help him, or he finds people turning against him. That's what we have to do. Hope that other daughters, like what happens in Romania, scattered around the world, get to work. For example, there's Susana and Carmen in Argentina, to name a few. But in Colombia, for example, we had created a work. Then the woman, who was a friend, suddenly started a propaganda campaign against Domina Nostra. She convinced her, and that was the end of it. This is really very important. Right then, my dears, I'm done for today. So it's a matter of deciding. It's a reconquest of the structures, with the cardinals meeting in the storeroom of Santa Marta, or I don't know where, but inside the Vatican. Or is it the small remnant that Pope Benedict spoke of, which saves the church and restores the church to its origins? So, listen up, everyone. Get stuck in. Who is sent by God? Because those hands melt away while they have them in their grasp. You don't mess with God. I announced something some time ago. It's just a matter of time, that's all. Right then, remember this afternoon at 5 o'clock, the second day of the Novena of the Rosary for Russia. And this evening there's Father Enrico with the Wednesday Bible study. I'll repeat, also, that last night there was an interesting catechesis on the Gospel of John, the Tuesday Gospel. You can find it on the playlist.